Great, let's just get down to it, shall we? So there were a handful of events on MTG Melee over the weekend. There was one larger tournament that had about 170 competitors. Then there was a 50-player tournament and a 30-player tournament that I've pulled some stats from and combined into a handy tiny spreadsheet here. We have about 500 matches to look at, all things considered. So this is those three events that I pulled off of MTG Melee here. So a couple of things to note at a glance. We have both Mono Green Aggro and Izzet Dragons as the two most represented decks, with Izzet Dragons actually underperforming by a little bit and Mono Green Aggro overperforming by a small margin here. Something to note that has happened in the data, though, is that the third most popular deck after Izzet Dragons being one of the two most popular is broken out as Izzet Turns, and the slightly less represented Izzet Turns variation actually had a more successful weekend than Izzet Dragons by a factor of almost 10%, which is a pretty decent chunk up. I was looking at these and curious if these were just a user differential or if there was an actual meaningful difference here. So just to highlight these two things for the folks at home, the average Izzet Dragons deck list looks something like this. It was still playing copies of Aldarune's Epiphany, and it notably is playing multiple dragons. Usually Goldspan Dragon and Smoldering Egg are the two dragons that are being favored. And then the Turns deck does look a little bit different. It looks like the kind of key differentiating factor in the Turns deck is not only a lack of Goldspan Dragon, but also an inclusion of Galvanic iterations. So the next time you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, you get to copy that spell. So basically you set up a kind of control deck going long, and then for 8 mana, you iteration, and then you cast Aldarune's Epiphany twice, which just casting Aldarune's Epiphany twice gives you 8 points of damage, assuming you have no board. And then if you Epiphany again the turn, on the first turn that you take, you add 2 more birds. So then you do 4, 6, and 6, which is 16. So like, just this plus this gives you a lot of damage right into each other. And that's not to mention, if you have a Smoldering Egg or a little bit of extra damage, something like a Prismari Commander, a Spike Field Hazard. So that's kind of the difference between those two. Overall, these metrics mostly line up with my experience playing on the ladder. The mono black snow decks looking a little bit weak, and those felt a little bit underpowered in my experience. The green aggro performing strong. The other categories down a little bit in terms of win rate overall, but 45% is within. Usually we look for win rates within 45 to 55%, so there's probably still things to be discovered in here if we're not getting punched down below 45%. Other things to note in kind of the less popular decks that might be things to look for going into next week is that Gruul Werewolves is a deck that I feel like there's a chance that this deck isn't well represented yet because it contains a lot of rares and mythics from the newest set, and people are still spending time acquiring cards. So I would wager that we see some amount of like this mono green aggro percentage eventually turn into some Gruul Werewolves if we keep seeing werewolves perform well, just as people grow their collections a bit more. Yeah, the control decks are still getting pretty slapped around trying to figure out what they want to do, right? So Azorius Control had an abysmal weekend. Mono Black Planeswalker is not quite as bad as Azorius, but still not fantastic. Sultai Midrange not having a good time. The Selesnya Ramp deck, so this was the archetype that won the Hoaglandia Open 2 weekends ago. And it's this archetype being less successful, still fine, but less successful. I would bet these dragon matchups are not amazing for it. This ramp archetype mostly looking to ignore its opponent. If you're looking to ignore the turns deck, I assume they're probably going to go over the top of you. Yeah, Izzet Turns is basically a combo control deck. is exactly correct. In addition to looking at the recent metrics from here, we could take a peekaboo at some stats here on the untapped best of three. So if we look at here, we can take a look at, this is popularity over time as well as win rate over time for our various things. So looks like one of the things that's interesting to note from this at a glance, a little bit easier to see up here, is that the Izzet Dragons deck, even though it's the most popular deck being played on the ladder, it's pretty far from the best win rate, right? So, and this ladder data, while the percentages aren't exact, it kind of matches / reflects what we saw in the tournament metagame this weekend, actually, right? So, Izzet Dragons, popular, but not a strong win rate. Mono Green Stompy, also popular, has a strong win rate. So it's kind of neat to see that the ladder is reflective of, so the naming classifications aren't exact between this and this. I would wager the Selesnya mid-range in this untapped data is actually what Selesnya ramp is classified here. So I would assume this is the Storm the Festival's Landfall style deck. So, yeah. Other things to note, Control, the only Control deck in the popular things here gets is getting dumpstered. Is this combining dragons and turns? Maybe. Probably. I have no way of knowing that, unfortunately. I would bet that that's probably the case, but we don't have a way to know that. And in fact, if this is combining dragons and turns, that would explain, this win rate being higher. I bet if we compound, what is it? Is it dragons and is it turns here? If I pull these out, this is, damn it, spreadsheets. It's about 50%. Yeah, this is a little over 50 if we put these together. So I wouldn't be surprised if these are close enough here that they're getting lumped together in their automatic parsing. Now I think we should take a peek at Historic. We're gonna take a peek at Historic real quick here. Taking a peekaboo at Historic. Huh, okay. Yeah, look at that. So Jeskai still the most popular thing by a lot, but its win rate actually isn't that high compared to other things. It's also worth noting that most of the other popular decks are decks that are trying to explicitly gun for Jeskai. I think like Mono White Humans has a pretty good matchup there. Selesnya Cup. It doesn't surprise me that two Thalia decks are some of the most successful here, with Jeskai Control being the most popular thing. And how's Jeskai Control's popularity been? Oh, chat. Oh no, chat. It just keeps. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, it was actually, holy crap. 22%. I've mostly been ignoring Historic because we've been playing a lot of it looks like it's creeping back up. It's creeping back up for that. Yeah, that's exactly what Sterek said there. So this line is the set releasing, and it looks like it was super popular, and then it dropped off hard when the new set released, and like, okay, now we're what? We're a week after the set release and people are done playing with new toys. They're like, all right, I'll go back to dumpstering people with Jeskai Control because Jeskai Control is good. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. What Pierogi Addict called out there is very important and meaningful. Jeskai Control is still sporting a 55% win rate on the ladder, despite being public enemy number 1. So like that in my mind really describes the power level of the deck, right? When you are the known best deck and you're still putting up that, almost 55% win rate, it really is a testament to how good your archetype is, that people could be like, nah, that's the thing I need to beat, and they're still winning more than you're losing. All right. Any other questions or comments before I call it a wrap on Meta Monday and we start playing some games? Things we think I missed. Other stuff we should chat about. We had a bunch of resubs in there. Fuzzy Jello, thank you for the 2 years. Solomon 1, thanks for the 16 months. Marzanti, thanks for the 11. Virtual Realism, thanks for the 18. All right.